Hello. So I am Ashwin Mehta, and I specialize in AI and advanced technologies for human capital, so including learning and development and things like that. And I have the pleasure today to be talking with Jacqui Woodall, who is a similar specialist, but in a very different sector. So Jacqui works in the legal sector. Jacqui, welcome.
Hi, Ash. So good to be here. Thanks for having me. So I am actually a human resources specialist by history, by background. I have worked in consulting, in human capital consulting for a long time. And so with an HR background, MCIPD, I focus on the people side of change. I'm now very much more a specialist in the strategic change management side, the people side of change when it comes to big transformations and also smaller incremental changes that people have to make from a human behavioral management perspective. So I was at the Big Four for a long time doing consulting, and now I'm out on my own, helping leaders to grapple with what this all means, AI and generative AI in particular for law firms. That's my particular specialism.
Yeah, love it. And this is something that we share. So I also came from Big Four, and now I'm out on my own with my own company doing my own thing. So it's a very liberating and freeing kind of
Yes, it is.
situation to be in, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into the meat of it. So today I would like to really have a good chat around this idea of AI in law. So I've seen on various social media platforms as I've been researching generative AI for human capital space. I've seen quite a lot of adverts, Instagram, LinkedIn posts on things like GPT for law and how AI is revolutionizing the legal industry. And of course, most of my work is in human capital. And the approach that I tend to take is looking at strategic purpose. So thinking about what business problems are we trying to solve, and then how can we apply human capital or technology to those problems to try and ensure competitive advantage for the business that is looking at AI. And it could be AI, it could be any number of other technologies that we could use. But when I think about this in learning and development or in human capital, I try and first of all nail down what is the problem that we're trying to solve and what's the purpose against which we would start to deploy some technology. So, in your experience with what we've been talking about in the legal space, what are the key problems that businesses are trying to solve?
Big issue that's facing the legal industry at the moment is that well, let me just take London and the UK market for an example. We're looking at a profession that has been largely, uh, the status quo has remained for 40 years, pretty much in terms of the business model and how they basically operate. And it hasn't been challenged up until now because so much of this rich knowledge and expertise has been sitting with, in law firms and with solicitors who've been building up a certain practice over years and years and years, and it's all in their brains and it's all in their own particular firm's IPs. And now we're in a totally different world where there's this proliferation of modular SaaS technology that is attempting to use generative AI tools and models and put their spin on it in a way that chunks up legal tasks and really makes it easy for the automation of specific types of work. So it is causing a real sense of threat to the way in which lawyers are used to operating. Now, it hasn't affected yet the broad scope of the way private practice law firms work. But it will not take very long before it's going to have more of a practical day-to-day impact on the business model, the way law firms are hiring. It's already impacting the way that they're hiring and running their people processes. And a key factor here is how law firms are led. It is my opinion that law firms generally are struggling for the right type of leadership skills. What is required is an agile mindset and a new way of operating that can really help people to navigate what is a very uncertain world now. And the old sort of very hierarchical ways of working where decision making is very much kept to but a few powerful people, and it's becoming untenable. I'm coming at this from a very much a human lens, so it's always about the human centric perspective. There are ways in which innovation can be much greater, harnessed for the benefit of the business if people are on board in the right way, and if people are able to approach new ways of working from less of a sense of fear and more a sense of openness and the ability to turn disruption into opportunity.
It's quite interesting. You've said a couple of things there which really, I reflect and I resonate with. And one of those things is, and my first career was in chemistry, so in science, and I was in a medical research company for a while as well. And in both of those areas, and it seems like you're saying something very similar for the legal sector, that if I'm a scientist, I'm a pretty good scientist. Maybe I have a bunch of papers and I make some scientific impact. And as I do that, I end up in a leadership position where I'm managing people. And the skill sets of being a great scientist and being a great people leader are very different. And it's the same in engineering. I'm a great engineer. I'm now a principal engineer. Now I lead people. A different skill set. And it sounds like you're saying something very similar for the legal sector. Is that right?
I'm saying something very similar. And it was okay for law firms to operate in that way because the structures and the challenges, the market challenges and the forces around them were such that actually it could be contained within quite a hierarchical structure. And has been very lucrative, is still quite lucrative, obviously for lawyers, especially in corporate worlds. At the moment, what we're seeing now is the repetition, and what still remains is an old model for what leadership looks like. And yes, you're absolutely right. What makes a leader in a law firm, an equity partner at a senior level within a private practice law firm successful is that they have proven themselves to be excellent at handling work for clients. And I mean, increasingly, there is a bit more delineation between those who become real technicians and those who are not necessarily brilliant at client facing. But I'd say there are some that obviously are very powerful within their organizations that are very good at client facing, but may also not be the best internal people leaders. So we've got all sorts of different angles that we're coming at this from. What does, excellent people leadership mean in a new era of generative AI within law firms? I have my views on that. It's not matching with what I see on the ground. There is definitely still, I think, a lack of people being equipped to be able to really help their people navigate these new waters. Yeah. Yes, because they're lawyers. They're brilliant at doing the old version of what law was, but not necessarily at what the new world requires. And I don't have the answers about what those requirements are actually necessarily, but I have some ideas about the core skill sets that are required to help navigate those waters.
So if we think about that in the context of what you originally said, and I said there were a couple of things that made me reflect. So the other thing that you said was around the idea of automation or AI workflows and handling routine tasks. So those routine tasks could be a wide variety of things. But if we think about a typical lawyer, solicitor, their workload is going to be just, I'm guessing, but just like everybody else in every other industry, there are going to be things that are value add that require that expert judgment. And there are going to be things that are routine administrative tasks or maybe some rudimentary data analysis or things that could potentially be given over to an agent or a workflow or some kind of orchestration of process. So when we think about exactly what you're saying, what is the role of the future? What does the workforce shape need to look like today?